What's going on, guys? So here's my DB9. As you guys are aware, I've had this car for almost a year now, and I figured this would be a good video to kind of show you guys what I experienced with the car over that time, what broke, what didn't break, and kind of just my first impressions seeing the car and seeing if that still kind of holds up. So my first impression of the DB9 was, this is like some large grand touring car. It's not going to be, you know, particularly lively to drive, and while it has some power, the main point of it is, you know, that it's like a comfortable car. No, wrong. That is not true at all. In my head, I was grouping this car in with like Bentleys and Rolls Royces, not even just this car, but like Aston Martin in general. You know, being a GT class car, it's not really hard to group this in with the same, you know, kind of echelon as like, you know, a Bentley Continental GT specifically, because actually that was one of my childhood dream cars. I wanted to get one of those, but after reading a little bit about what the Aston Martin was like, it kind of made sense to just get this instead. So sometimes don't meet your heroes, guys. It's not always what you thought it was. But I stepped into the car, and I've never technically driven a DB9 before. I say technically because I almost bought another car before I bought this one, and honestly, thank God I didn't. I guess I gotta link you that video too. Good story, you should see that. So yeah, I hopped in the car and I wasn't really sure what to expect. And, you know, it was immediate right away that this was not a Bentley, this was not a Mercedes, this was absolutely not a Rolls Royce, not even close. Oh my God. This was a performance, this is a sports car. The Aston Martin DB9 is a sports car. It is a larger car, you know, bigger than like the Vantage or something like that. You know, it's got its rear seats, they're kind of useless, but they are there. And it has like a, you know, kind of a large trunk. It is a comfortable car to drive. It's, you know, I'm not saying it's like a full-on sports car like a 430 Challenge or something like that, but if you want to throw this thing into corners, you can absolutely do that and have a really good time doing it. It's got this really engaging transmission. Yeah, this DB9 has the paddle shifter transmission, but it's the ZF transmission, and they're German made. Maserati uses them as well, countless other manufacturers that I'm just not specifically aware of at the moment, but they're great transmissions, and they're known for consistency, and this is consistently awesome. So another reason I went with the DB9 is because in our group specifically, nobody had one. We have a guy or two that's got a Vantage, and they, you know, come in and out to some of the events, but you know, you rarely see DB9s, and honestly, I'm not really sure why that is, because I feel like at the price point these cars are, you get a whole lot for what you're paying. You get a V12 engine, you get a rear-mounted transaxle, you get the paddle shift transmission, you can get these things in convertible if you choose to, the Volante they call it. So I feel like for what these cost, you're getting an immense value, and I think people are scared of like the maintenance because, you know, it's got this V12 engine, and the first 2 model years specifically, it had some engine issues. Fortunately, my car is exempt from that as far as I'm aware, and, you know, no issues here. But honestly, I just think the maintenance scares some people, and, you know, the Vantage feels a little bit more manageable because, you know, it's essentially a parts bin car, and honestly, so is this. And I guess a lot of people don't realize that. This V12 engine borrows parts from Duratec Ford V6s. So the pistons are the same, the springs are the same as the Duratec. You know, obviously the block is different and all that stuff, but really, it's been a solid car, and I felt that if anything did break, even something major, I felt like I had the means to do it. I wasn't buying a car that was out of my financial reach, and, you know, that's definitely important if you're buying your first exotic car. Maybe I'll make a video on just that, and I'll tell you guys, you know, my whole rant about the PPI and all that crap. So maybe look for that in the future. I guess this is also a good time to segue into telling you guys what the maintenance has been like on this car. You know, because everyone is thinking, oh, that car must break all the time. And I don't know what it is about English cars, because before I actually bought one, I thought that as well. I thought that, you know, English cars are just terrible, they break all the time, who would ever buy that junk? And honestly, it's really not true at all. You know, it might be one of those things where it was true like 50 years ago, and people that don't know anything just keep repeating it, and, you know, whatever. I'm not gonna say that this car couldn't cost you an arm and a leg, because I know right now that if I go on Scuderia Parts, if I want a new long block engine for this car, it's literally $40,000. So I'm not gonna sit here and say that these cars are cheap to run. I had a friend that just got rid of a Lamborghini, and he came pretty close to some very severe problems several times. Fortunately, overall, he had a good experience with the car, and he loved driving it, but it was just hit after hit, and eventually it just made no more sense to own. You know, because of that, it wasn't matching what he was expecting out of the car. You know, a lot of us like to drive our cars. I've driven this car 5,000 miles, by the way, and it's been really good. All right, let's get into the specifics a little bit. So I've driven this car about 5,000 miles since I bought it. That includes driving it home from Texas. I spoke to a lot of other Aston owners I see at these events I go to, and just about every single one of them said they only drive their car maybe 1,000, 1,500 miles a year. So if you look at it on paper, I've driven this car, you know, 3-4 years worth in one summer. And I guess, you know, you're expecting me to tell you some crazy horror story about maintenance, but luckily, again, the truth is the exact opposite, basically. I have about $400 in maintenance on this entire car, maybe a little bit more. So I got the stay inspection, I got the air conditioning serviced, I got the tires put on, and the window motor I had to get replaced, but that was free. So the shop bought me new tires, the place I bought the car from, they bought me brand new tires for the car, and they also bought me a new window regulator for the passenger side. I knew the car needed tires, and I knew it needed that motor. They wanted to give me white glove treatment, and I'm really grateful that, you know, they were really hospitable about the car's condition. That was great. So they sorted all that stuff out. The only thing I had to pay for was state inspection. I had to pay for, I had to get the air conditioning recharged, and I had to get the tires put on. And only on top of that, it's just, you know, your fluid changes, oil change, I changed the power steering, you know, all that stuff. And yeah, it's been really consistent. No horror stories to talk about yet. Compared to what can happen, I definitely feel pretty fortunate about the maintenance, and hopefully the next car I get is just as reliable as this one's been. So anyway, next I kind of want to tell you about, you know, like the car and everything like that over time, because, you know, a lot of people have asked me, oh, do you still like it? Are you bored with it now? And, you know, stuff like that. And I think a lot of why people get bored with cars is they expect it to be something different than what it actually is. And in my case, it exceeded expectations, because, you know, I expected a car more that was going to handle like a Mercedes, when this handles more like a sports car that rides on rails a little bit. It's got stiff suspension, stiff steering, and even the power brakes barely work, but like in a good way. You have to really push the pedal to get the feedback from the car, and it feels like you're more connected to the experience. And I wasn't expecting any of that. I was just expecting this big 2-ton boat, basically, kind of like my Mercedes. And that couldn't be more wrong, like I said earlier. So because of that, I got a car that's more exciting to drive, more lively, and because I never really had any up-close experience with Aston Martin before, this kind of gave me like a whole new expectation and, you know, image of what that brand really is. There are some people, particularly anyone from you know, Britain that's watching this, a lot of people regard Aston Martin as the English Ferrari, and anyone not from England right now is probably rolling their eyes at that statement, but it's kind of true. A lot of people over there hold these cars to, you know, that level of prestige, and do I agree with it? Not quite, I'm sorry guys, but this is a very nice car, and now every time I see someone driving an Aston Martin, and every time someone talks highly of Aston Martin, I know what they're talking about. And this is just a 15-year-old DB9. I can only imagine what the new ones are like. So next, I guess I'll tell you guys what I like and I don't like about the car. And we're gonna start with likes, and of course the first thing on that list is the sound. This car sounds incredible, especially after adding the Velocity AP exhaust parts. This car in particular, I put the X-pipe on it and I put the muffler delete, and honestly that's how the car should have sounded from factory. It's not too loud. If you get on the gas, it starts making nice F1 car sounds. It literally sounds like a Formula One car. It's got that nice whine that you'd expect a V12 car to have. It's not quite like a Ferrari or like an Aventador. It's not that in your face, but if it was louder, it would definitely, you know, be more in that direction. I think this will sound like an entirely different car with the long tube headers from Velocity, but they're really expensive, and I'm not gonna put them on this car. But if you do, it sounds phenomenal. So keep that in your back pocket if you are considering a DB9, because you can make it sound like a Formula One car. The next thing I want to tell you guys about is the transmission. And that sounds kind of like silly to say, I guess, but you can actually put this car in and out of gear like it's a like an F1 gearbox on a Ferrari. You push both paddles in, it puts you in neutral, then you hit the shift up, and now you're in first gear, and you don't have to hit a gear selector or anything like that. The only time you actually need the gear selector is to put the car in reverse. There's no like secret button for that or anything. You have to push the button on the dash there, and now you're in reverse. So the last thing I love about this car is the doors. I think it's the coolest thing that they swing up just a little bit. I can't think of any other car that does that. I'm sure there might be a couple just, you know, here and there throughout history that have swept upward. Aston Martin calls them swan wing doors, and they claim that they'll help you clear any curb. So I've never been to England, but I can't imagine their curbs are like 2 feet high. They really just did this to look cool, and honestly it worked, because these doors are so cool. You can't look not cool hopping out of an Aston Martin. It's not possible. Alright, so I guess I gotta tell you everything I don't like about this car, and honestly for me, none of them were like a real glaring deal breaker. I was willing to live with everything that I knew about before I purchased the car, and the only real deal breaker for you would be the back seats, and that's actually the first thing that I don't particularly like on this car. So they're so small that you literally can't even fit like, you know, a larger child in them. There's no leg room at all. I'm about 5'7", and quite literally the front of the seat is pressed up against the back of the front seat. So there's really no leg room at all for anyone sitting in the back. And I understood that this car wasn't exactly a family hauler, so I don't really care. You know, it's just annoying, you know, that like 1 in like 15 times where it's unexpected that I have to carry people, because then I have to put my seat all the way up if I want to, you know, put like an adult in the back. And even then, their knees are like touching me. So Aston Martin designed this car really to be a 2-seater with some extra space. And if you look at it like that, I think that the rear seat makes a lot more sense. So another thing that I don't particularly like about this car is, it's honestly more of a quirk, but it's annoying. These visors are useless. Look at this. Like, my thumb is about the size of this visor. Absolutely useless. And if you don't have sunglasses, then you literally might as well just kind of go like that. and that would probably be more effective than these sun visors would be. They don't flip off to the sides either, and honestly, there'd be no point if they did, and I think Aston Martin knew that. So there's a couple other things with the car that I can't really blame on the car because they just stem from how old it is. So another thing that I don't particularly like is the navigation. It's useless. You're not going to use it. It's from 2006. Every DB9 came standard with it, and I would imagine back in 2006, wait for it, they probably still barely used it. It's really hard to use. You have to like use this like joystick thing to pick, you know, what you want to type in with like the address and the numbers and everything. I can't imagine anybody used it then, and you're sure as hell not using it now. It's very out of date, and it sucks. Another thing I don't particularly care for is how the phone pairs to it. So this car is a 2006, and this was kind of before phones were used to play music. So again, can't really fault the car for this. This car was equipped with one of these hands-free Bluetooth options. It actually has a Bluetooth module right there where you can pair with your phone. And while it does work with my 2019 Apple iPhone, despite, you know, the car coming out in 2004 and this one is an 06, you can only do calling with it. You can't, you know, like stream music through it. It's only for phone calls. And if you use it for what it's intended for, honestly, it works pretty well. But it annoys me that you can't play music through the factory stereo. So what you have to do is buy this expensive fiber optic thing that ties into the disc changer. But I don't really listen to music all that much when I'm in this car. So I just kind of opted for one of these FM transmitter things. It's garbage. Yes, I know. So I'm actually editing this video as we speak, and I forgot to include this conclusion, and obviously that's pretty important because you kind of have to wrap up, you know, everything. So I guess the $1 million question is, would I buy my car again, and my specific car again, I guess? And the answer to both of those is yes, absolutely. I feel like I got a good car in particular, and I feel like the DB9 in general was a great choice, and more specifically a good first exotic car. And yes, I would absolutely do it again. Just owning a car like this has let me network with some fantastic people, and you know, I'm really grateful for all of that. Of course, I would do it all again in a heartbeat, not even considering anything else. I did tell you guys earlier in the video that I do have some news about this car, so sadly I've decided to list the car for sale, but there's something really exciting coming soon enough. Not soon enough to start telling you about it, but something pretty exciting is coming, so start looking for that. But yeah, all right, I'm gonna send this back to Sunset Todd, and he's gonna wrap up the video for you. All right, guys, this seems like a pretty decent time to end the video, so hopefully you guys liked what you saw, and if you're thinking about getting an Aston Martin DB9, maybe I persuaded you for it or against it. Either way, if that's what happened, I think I did a pretty good job of that, so I'll see you guys next time.